In World War II, the German Messerschmitt Me-262 was the world's first operational jet-powered fighter aircraft used in battle. Its use spelled the beginning of the end of the piston-engine aircraft. It was faster than the P-51 Mustang by over 120 miles per hour. It was such an advanced design that Allied air forces studied and copied it after the war, and based many of their post-war jet fighter designs on it. So, even though it was developed late in the war, two questions should be asked. First, could the Me-262 jet interceptor have shown up over the Normandy coastline in early June 1944? And secondly, would that have made a difference in the outcome of the D-Day invasion, and also the outcome of the war? German jet fighter design and development began even before the war began, in April 1939. Even with this head start, progress was slow because the Luftwaffe had other priorities and didn't initially see the need for a jet fighter when their own excellent fighters like the Bf-109 were doing so well all over Europe. From a German point of view, World War II had transitioning phases, and thus the leadership of the Reich had changing thoughts on what was needed over the years from their air arm. These shifted from year to year and caused problems with factory production. The German Air Force, called the Luftwaffe, had radically different needs from, say, May 1940, which was the invasion of France, contrasted with April 1944, when Allied bombers were bombing German cities day and night, when fighter interceptors were at a priority. In late April to early May 1944, Chancellor Adolf Hitler and Commander-in-Chief of the Luftwaffe, Hermann Göring, started meddling in the design and production of the Me-262. During a discussion about the emergency aircraft program, Hitler had found out that none of the new jets were able to carry bombs, but all were being built exclusively as fighter aircraft. Hitler was filled with rage. Those officers who were close to Hitler said that they had rarely witnessed such a fit of temper. Hitler lashed out at Göring and the Luftwaffe at length, accusing them of unreliability, disobedience, and unfaithfulness. At the time, in May 1944, Hitler was concerned about the Eastern Front and tactical bombing. Although Luftwaffe commanders watched the oppressive waves of Allied bombers and fighters bomb and blast Western Europe, and especially Germany, at will, and wanted a good interceptor to stop them, Hitler ordered Göring to make the Me-262 jet into a bomber instead. There was a major problem with that. It didn't work very well as a bomber. Structural modifications had to be made to the airframe and the bomber crews had to be retrained. Even then, it was wildly inaccurate. It sometimes dropped a bomb a mile off target. Later, with the airframe improvements, German pilots could finally attack on a shallow dive, and the results improved. Amazingly, when Hitler was told this, he replied, "There are so many Allied vehicles on the roads that if you drop a bomb, it is sure to hit something." This subject was a very sensitive one for Hitler. The staff around him knew not to bring up the fact that the new jet fighter would be better as an air-to-air interceptor. I don't wish to hear any more of this nonsense. I've had enough of it. Fate hands me this one chance of wreaking a terrible vengeance, and here are you people trying to deprive me of it, with short-sighted squabbles between bomber and fighter pilots. My decision is made. This aircraft is a bomber, a blitz bomber, my instrument of revenge. It is not a fighter, and it never can be a fighter. So, what changed? One of the main proponents of the jet fighter as an interceptor was Luftwaffe General Adolf Galland, who was himself an air ace who ended the war with 104 confirmed aerial victories. He believed that such an interceptor might turn things around for a Germany that was losing the war. Over time, a few Me-262 interceptors were built. Once airborne, it could accelerate to speeds of over 530 miles per hour or 850 kilometers per hour, which was about 93 miles per hour faster than any Allied fighter operational in the European theater of operations. It had a cruising speed of 465 miles per hour, which was faster than the top speed of most other fighters of the day. It also had far better visibility in every direction compared to previous German fighters. Its top speed was 560 miles per hour and a service ceiling of about 37,500 feet. This jet wasn't a dogfighter, but a bomber buster. So, the bomber variant was available in very small quantities, but wouldn't have done much of anything against Allied soldiers on the beaches. If the Luftwaffe had recognized the need for a jet interceptor earlier in the war, say in 1942, and had put more effort behind it, the jet interceptor would have been in operational status in either late 1943 or early 1944. In order for this to happen, Hitler and Goering would have had to not meddle with it and allow the Luftwaffe to develop it quickly. If they had not insisted on a bomber version, and the Luftwaffe had focused solely on the interceptor version, which would have been a best case scenario for the Germans, then the results might have been interesting to say the least. Historically, despite all the problems with production, the Allied bombings, the fuel shortages, and lack of materials, over 1,400 Me-262s of all types were said to have been built. It appears that only 300 interceptors actually flew in combat, the rest being destroyed on the ground. If the Germans had started earlier and had been able to put up 700 jet interceptors in May 1944, which is a very reasonable number considering what historically happened, then the Allies would have lost air supremacy and probably air superiority at times in certain locations. To give a great example of the potential of these jets, German pilot Heinz Arnold of Jagdgeschwader, which is translated Fighter Wing, 7, scored 41 victories over Soviet piston-engine fighters and 7 over American bombers and fighters. With such a German tactical advantage in the skies over Europe in 1944, the Allies would have lost too many bombers too often before the D-Day invasion. They may have cancelled their round-the-clock bombing of the Reich and caused them to use bombers only for specific tactical missions. They would have thought long and hard about the D-Day invasion because one of the underlying guarantees was that the Allies would have air superiority at a minimum. German jet interceptors wouldn't have done much strafing of the beaches, but they would have been able to contest the air around the beaches long enough for the prop-driven regular bombers to drop their loads of bombs onto the beaches. This would have certainly caused problems for the Allies and delays. This would have slowed their army buildup and concentration compared to what historically happened. Now we circle back to the second question. Would that have made a difference in the outcome of the D-Day invasion and also the outcome of the war? In my opinion, this would not have won the war for the Germans, even if they had had 3 times the amount of jet fighters with great pilots and all the fuel they needed. However, I do believe it would have delayed the war for another 2 to 3 months or so because of the effect it would have on the Allied buildup in France after the invasion. There's also a slim possibility that the Allies may have delayed the invasion by another month or 2 just because of the lack of air superiority. We must temper all this by saying that the Me-262 was made with slave labor from concentration camps. It's reported that an estimated 35,000 to 50,000 people died while working on the Me-262. It's fine to look at the technical aspects of the German fighter, but Nazi Germany had no problem using perishing, hungry slaves to build their wonder weapons. Nazi Germany was a murderous regime that should never be repeated nor supported. So keeping in mind the Holocaust that Hitler and his Nazi minions put in action, we should repeat the phrase, never forget. EmersusTech stands behind the Jewish people and the State of Israel. Yes, there are a lot of swastikas, SS men, and Nazis in the videos because that is part of history, and we're not deleting history. However, in no way should this ever be taken to support Nazism or Adolf Hitler. There is a clear difference between teaching history as it happened and supporting the atrocities that actually happened. Let us never forget. If you liked the video you just watched, then you may like these 2 other videos from EmersusTech.